Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the first ever Eyes on Inclusion being out in Eyecare. My name is Nishant Mahler, and I work in marketing here at Alcon. I'm also proud to be the co-chair for OPEN, our Open Professionals Employee Network, an employee resource group dedicated to creating a connected and supportive community for our LGBTQ members at Alcon, our customers, and allies. I'm actually really honored to partner with OWL on what will hopefully be the first of many of these types of engaging events to drive awareness and create a better and inclusive community. I'd like to hand it off to Abigail Marquardt from OWL to introduce herself.
Thank you so much, Nishant. Thank you, Heather, and thank you, Alcon, for the opportunity to partner and support this Eyes on Inclusion discussion. My name is Abigail Marquardt, the current president of Ophthalmic World Leaders. As a quick background, for those in the audience who may not be familiar with the OWL organization, it was founded in 2003 as Ophthalmic Women Leaders with the goal to elevate women in ophthalmology and to unite female MDs and industry executives leading ophthalmology. In 2015, the board decided to broaden OWL's focus to advance diversity in leadership, whether that be diversity of gender, race, age, sexual orientation, or thought. We know that when we come together and embrace differences in all areas, everyone wins. We made a bold move to convert the W and L from women to world to become Ophthalmic World Leaders, a move to demonstrate inclusivity and to forward our mission to provide professional and personal development and create opportunities for collaboration, such as today's discussion. A huge component of the OWL growth and transformation has been the support of our members and corporate sponsors. Alcon has been unwavering in their support of OWL, not only as a partner sponsor for several years, but Alcon members have sat on our board, led committees, and given invaluable insights to the organization. That being said, I am especially excited to help support Alcon and the LGBTQ+ community within the eye health space. Also, please remember you are able to submit questions during this entire panel discussion at any time by using the Q&A button or simply use the chat. So without further delay, I'm going to hand this over to Heather Attra to kick off today's discussion.
It is my great pleasure to be able to moderate this first ever discussion. As Nishant said, we have three great panelists with us, and I will let them introduce themselves in just a moment. I'll start out introducing myself. I'm the Senior Vice President of Quality here at Alcon. I've been here 10 years and very proud and to be part of the open community and to support diversity and inclusion here in our culture. We really look forward to this discussion and future discussions like this, but it's a great place to start to have this one today. So without further ado, enough about myself. I'd like to hand it off to Dr. Amanda Lee to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Lee, and I work for Vision Source. I'm currently the Vice President of Professional Development, which means I get to intimately manage and work with all the administrators within Vision Source, our leaders, our doctor leaders out in the field. I've been with Vision Source now for just a little bit over a year as an internal person. Prior to that, I was a Vision Source member and administrator for about 15 years. A private practitioner by love and trade, but stepped out of private practice about 3 years ago now to walk into the industry because I really felt like we needed more OD leadership within the industry, and so that's why I'm here. I've been a customer and a proud supporter of Alcon over the years, and really feel like I've had just an amazing time within their organization from time to time as a speaker, a consultant, and I've participated within the student program at Alcon as well. So it's been a really wonderful relationship with the company, and this is something that I think just deepens that even further. So I'm really looking forward to today's conversation and partnering with the group Alcon.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. Dr. Peter MacIntosh.
Good evening. I'm Peter MacIntosh, and I am at the University of Illinois in Chicago at the Illinois Eye and Ear Infirmary. I've been in this position at this institution for about 5 years, and about a year ago, I took on the residency program director position. So a lot of what I do on a day-to-day basis has to do with training residents and preparing our program for the future changes that are ultimately coming our way. My subspecialty training is in neuro-ophthalmology and oculoplastic surgery, but I have a lot of interests even beyond that. I mentioned education as well as global health. I also lead one of our global ophthalmology fellowship programs. So really one of the most important things that I do on a day-to-day basis, as you can hear from the things that I do, is education. So I think that it's really important as educators that we are cognizant of all of the different types of learners that are coming our way. And I look forward to the discussion about how we can incorporate this into education as we go forward.
Thank you. And Dr. Walter.
Thanks, Heather, and thanks, Nishant, for inviting me to participate in today's panel discussion. It's really a pleasure to be here, and really cool that you guys are supporting this along with ophthalmology world leaders. So I am a retina specialist in private practice in Hartford, Connecticut. I've been in practice here with the group for about 3.5 years after completing my fellowship training in vitreoretinal surgery and ocular oncology at Duke and Bascom Palmer. I love Alcon, and especially their vitrectomy equipment is amazing technology. And Nishant and I connected, through our, mutual friends on the sales side. But I'm really glad you guys invited me to participate in today's discussion, and look forward to sharing my perspective with everyone.
Great. And again, we thank you all for joining us. Looking forward to starting the discussion. So let me start with you, Dr. Lee. As a member of the LGBTQ plus family, what has been your experience being out in eye care?
It's a great question, Heather, and one that I struggled with a little bit when I first was asked about this question, and partly because I haven't been 100% out all of my career. I would say that I've been neutral on some level, and part of that means if someone inquired about my sexual orientation, of course, I was honest and shared exactly what was happening in my life at the time, but I wasn't always forward in being out with patients in our clinic, because it just wasn't something that I felt I had to do in order to take great care of people. And so that was never anything that I purposefully hid nor flaunted, I guess, much like I might have done in my personal life. However, I would say I was much more out in my personal life than my professional life, just because it was easier. It was easier for me. So that's my honest answer, I guess.
Oh, great. Well, thank you very much.
Sure.
Dr. Walter, how about you?
Well, I think it's an evolution for everyone. Certainly, as you start out in your training, you have a tendency to kind of manage your professional persona differently, especially as a medical student. I was very much in the closet and kind of came out only to close friends who were gay. And, as I got into residency, I started being more comfortable, coming out to my co-residents and select faculty. And during residency, I met my husband, and, as our relationship blossomed, I started being more confident in coming out to patients and sharing that with select individuals. And, now in private practice, I agree that, on a day-to-day basis, many of my patients don't need to know very much about my personal life. But, as you grow closer with people over time, I think that it's important that you be able to open up to patients that you just have a genuine connection and being able to be out and open about your family life and your sexuality, I think makes it easier to connect to people and build those relationships. It's also interesting to me that you encounter a lot of older patients who are themselves in the closet and, are sort of, this may be the first time they've ever had a doctor who identified as LGBT. And so, it's amazing how many of those patients there are out there who, are very relieved to kind of see a familiar face in the doctor's office. So I think, that goes for all sorts of underrepresented minorities, but having a diverse physician workforce is good for patients, and helps us all connect and learn from each other.
So true. Dr. MacIntosh, how about you?
Yeah, it's really been a positive thing for me, and I've been pleasantly surprised with how accepted and supported I've been throughout all of my medical career. I came out of the closet in medical school and actually met my husband when I was a medical student. So he went through the entire medical training process with me, and he's not a physician. And, through all of this, I was always very open, and probably at the beginning of medical school was the only time where I was maybe somewhat closeted still about who I am. But since meeting my husband and sort of finishing medical school and going into training, I've been very forthcoming with who I am and what my life is about. I wouldn't say that I necessarily lead with that type of information, but it's very known, and I felt nothing but supported and throughout the whole process in training and even in my career now at the University of Illinois. So I think it's been a very positive process. And, it's interesting, what are the factors behind why that is? It's certainly not what I would have expected. Before I came out of the closet, there were a lot of things I was worried about and concerned about perceptions and what people might think. And so much of that has changed in terms of how I think about myself and what other people think. So it's been a positive for me.
That's great. I found it interesting that, we are in a subgroup that actually can choose to disclose. And because of that, we sometimes need to make the choice of what we are disclosing when. It seems to be a little bit of an extra thought process that we go through. But very important for each of us to approach it in our own way. Let's move on to the next question, which is tied to that, which is, has being your authentic self affected your interactions with your patients? Dr. Walter, would you mind starting? I think you mentioned a little bit of this in your previous answer.
Yeah, it's definitely has infected my interactions with patients. Like I was saying, there are people out there who may not come out, but they may just have another person in the room, for instance, who you would otherwise assume is a sister or a, friend or something like that. So I think more and more of those patients have come out to me as sort of being in LGBT identified individuals. I think there's more patients out there than we think, because we don't always ask about it, especially in eye care. It's not immediately relevant to the care of our patients, but it is valuable.
Understand. Dr. MacIntosh, your experience?
Yeah, again, I say, I've changed so much, and being authentic about who I am now, it's like the wall has come down about the things that I feel comfortable and willing to talk about that many years ago I just wouldn't have. And I think that allows, not even just with patients, but with colleagues and friends, allows a much deeper relationship to build. It's interesting, even with some patients, about the things that we connect on. My husband and I have 2 children that we had through surrogacy. And although in ophthalmology, you wouldn't think that that's something that would come up with a patient, but in neuro-ophthalmology, patients have many systemic diseases. And I've had more than one patient where something comes up about difficulty having children. And I've connected on more than one occasion on that topic, even though the reason that my husband and I went through surrogacy might be not the same as another couple, but still being able to connect at that level about something, I think is really great. And again, not something I ever thought that I would have been discussing with a patient when I started medical school many years ago. So being authentic has really allowed these, as I mentioned, these walls to come down and just really a much deeper connection with other people.
Great, thank you. And Dr. Lee, your perspective.
It just struck me as both doctors were speaking that they really don't train us in medical school or professional school how to be our authentic selves. They teach us how to, do a history, an intake, a SOAP, and get the patient out of the practice. But they don't teach us really how to be that authentic person. And I think as time evolved as a practitioner, it really just happened naturally. You start to feel comfortable in your own skin as a professional. And when patients ask you outright, you're always, at least I was always wondering if I was going to get that question. So, are you married? And early on in my career, it was a difficult thing to be honest and answer that forthright, with the patient. But as I matured and moved on, it got easier. And answering that question honestly, yes, I have a partner, and no, I won't go out with you tonight, or whatever it might have been. It's always, it just evolved, I guess, as time went on. And being able to be your own self, your authentic self, is really critical. And so for those of you listening in the audience, if you're wondering if you should, I would absolutely encourage you to be sooner rather than later. It does 2 things. It really shows your patients that you are real, that you are true, you're a human being, and you're not on some pedestal, right? We're all equal. And the other thing it does is it takes the weight off of you. You don't have to pretend even to yourself, which I think is one of the most difficult things to do, is to put on that face or that mask and go to work and pretend that you're someone who you're not. And for me, being able to answer that question honestly whenever it came, or to have a conversation with a patient that was obviously with their partner in the exam lane, was one of the greatest experiences that I've ever had. And because you're real, you get to be real with them. So
that's great. That's great. And I second what you said. I spent a lot of time telling myself that, being professional at work and not necessarily sharing my entire self or being fully authentic shouldn't matter, and therefore, I'll be just as effective. But what I have found is that it mattered to me to finally embrace that and come out and be my full self at work. And because of that, I think it's also positively impacting how I contribute at work. So I really did underestimate the importance of bringing my true self to work. I think those are great words. Let's move on to the next question, which is, what makes you proud to be part of the community? What makes you proud to be part of this LGBTQ plus community? Dr. MacIntosh, why don't we start with you?
I think one of the things that I'm proud about is being part of this community at this time in history, where there's so much support and understanding for the LGBT community. And as I mentioned, I think for many of us, coming out is become an easier and easier process. That, again, I couldn't have pictured myself many years ago, and it's these changes in society, a lot of it, that have allowed this to be comfortable as it was for me when I did it. So I think that's one of the things I'm proud about, to be at this point in history where there's been so much progress on this part of our social system.
But you, Dr. Lee.
Yeah, I would echo what Peter just said. I think that it's been an amazing time. I came out in the late 80s, early 90s, and the evolution of our community over time has just been incredible. And I'm so grateful to those who were brave enough ahead of me, ahead of our time, to be out and to fight for our rights and to be forward thinking. I think that makes it much more valuable to me to be part of this community. And the one thing that I hope to do over time is to be able to pay that forward to the next generation that comes after, because it really is something that we need to grow and allow to flourish. The love that we have for our partners and our community is just as amazing as it would be in any other community. And so I think that having that foundation and that pride makes me really enjoy being part of this community. I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Dr. Walter.
I guess, what I'm proudest of is, my husband and the family and life that we've built together, and the ability, of this professional platform that we have as ophthalmologists, to be visible to so many people. I mean, we see people a week in our offices. We have the opportunity to be up on the podium at meetings. We have the opportunity to interact with trainees at the medical student level, at the resident and fellow level, and colleagues all around the world. And just being able to be my genuine self and share the joys of our gay life together, is it's a wonderful time to be out and to share our successes and happiness with all of our friends, colleagues, patients, and everyone else we come into. I think that being able to live authentically and openly normalizes our lifestyle, makes it that much more understandable and easy to empathize with, especially those who may have preconceived notions about it, based on their upbringing or other factors.
Yeah, that's great. And I really, we are grateful for this venue holding this and for others like it, because what I've learned is that unless we disclose in some instances, then people don't necessarily see people like them. Again, it's not like it's 100% that you can tell if somebody is in the LGBTQ plus community. And I've gotten a lot of comments and support from folks in Alcon only coming out a year ago, in terms of them seeing somebody on the leadership team that is like them, and the impact that has had beyond the personal impact. So we really do appreciate you taking the time to have this panel. I do want to add one more question, if I may. What advice would you give to allies that are listening to this panel today, in terms of helping the diversity and inclusion movement? Let me start with you, Dr. Walter.
Caught me off guard with an unexpected question there. Advice to allies. I think just to not be afraid to engage with others who are, from you, and to broaden your professional, circles. I think, Retina used to be an old boys club, but really it's sort of, coming of age in so many different ways, with, women in retina, achieving, positions of incredible prominence in industry, and the same is, true for other minorities, including racial minorities and LGBTQ communities. So I think, I think it's becoming easier and easier to sort of network, with with others. We share these professional bonds, and it's not sort of an old boys club like it used to be. Just to change and to get to know your colleagues and inquire about their families and just to broaden your circle.
Thank you. Dr. MacIntosh.
The coming out process is a very personal experience, and it's different for everyone, and everyone's going to be at a different phase in their life when they're ready to do it. We've heard that again and again here today. But I think that for those of us who are out, it's so critically important to be visible, to allow others who may be not ready to do it to see, maybe even to confide in, so that that level of comfort can come out. But more importantly, for people who are not LGBTQ+, to see those of us who are and get to know us. Many people have preconceived notions or misunderstandings or misconceptions about what the gay community is, and it's so important for us to show what it actually is and to foster this support that we need in order for this community to grow.
Great. And Dr. Lee.
Yeah, I agree. I think that creating a safe environment for those of us who want to come out is critical. And I find that the more diverse our entities become, the stronger that they become. So that is something that I think that every ally, as you put it, should work towards, because I think as they go through the process, they'll find that they're enriching their own community or their own culture at work, which is something that we probably could use a little dose of these days.
Oh, great. Well, again, I want to thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedule to participate in this panel. Looking forward to the live discussion with our audience coming up in here shortly. And just stay tuned. Thank you very much.
Hello again, everyone. And we wanted to again thank our panel for our discussion. We are very excited now to continue the discussion live here with the audience today. We've received some questions ahead of time that we'll start out with. We have a couple of polls, and then as we've been saying in the chat, feel free to provide your own questions, submit your own questions, and we'll pepper those in along the way. So let's get started right now with some of the questions that we received, which we've been excited to talk about here. So the first question, which actually is directed at me, so I will answer that question before I start throwing to the panel, was what benchmarks are used to achieve the ideal diversity profile for the company? And the answer is this: for Alcon, our approach has been evolving as we've become an independent company. Currently, what we're doing is we've begun to use a combination of our job code matching and census data to get an idea of market availability, determine our targets for representation by function and industry, for example, ophthalmologist and R&D, and then our aspiration is to match or exceed those benchmarks. Those aren't the only initiatives that we're doing, and hitting that target alone based on what the benchmark currently is today in the market isn't our only aspiration, of course. We also aspire to influence and help grow diversity of all kinds in the field of eye care. That's a little bit about how we do our benchmarking. The second question that we got was about practice owners. So this says, our practice owners take a stance of not wanting to be political across the board. While I appreciate that neutrality and focus on patient care, I personally think it's a missed opportunity to further declare and advance our brand. How might best I move this needle? Scott, do you mind starting with what your thoughts are on that question?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm in a small private practice group. I had the opportunity to become a partner about a year and a half ago, and I think that that's really empowered me as a basically a vice president of the organization to have some kind of say in these issues. But even if you're not at that sort of level of leadership, I think that in healthcare we work in teams, and even at sort of the team level, I think each doctor has sort of a team of core staff around them, and we've really fostered our own sort of culture amongst our team members that I think is very inclusive, and I share a lot of the updates on what's going on in my life and with my team members, and that encourages openness both ways. So I think as far as larger organizations, I think really large organizations like Alcon are getting more hip to the D&I sort of movement. I think that's really gaining a lot of steam right now, which is great. But as far as sort of medium-sized physician-owned organizations, sometimes we're a little bit further behind as far as these kinds of initiatives are concerned.
Amanda, how about you?
Well, as a 20-year plus private practice veteran, well, number one, I think it's personal preference for the practice owner. Number one. Number two, as a member of the LGBTQ plus community here in our area, we had the ability to allow our practice to participate in our local LGBTQ business guild. And I realize not all areas might have that, but it gave us that opportunity to reach out to our community. And it was a way to expand our patient base, which was fabulous. And also a way where we had more visibility within our business community. So, encourage your practice owners to reach out and do those sorts of things. There are multiple ways and multiple organizations besides our own that we can participate with. But the whole goal, as you're alluding to, whoever submitted the question, the whole goal is to get more patients into the practice. And so, yeah, encourage them to reach out. And there's ways to do it in a professional manner that certainly can benefit the entire practice.
Well, thank you guys for those thoughts. Next question was, how much of your personal life do you choose to keep private from your colleagues, and why? Peter, the question was directed to you and I. Do you mind going first?
Thank you for that question. And honestly, I don't really keep any of it decidedly private. I discuss my private life with my colleagues, with my straight colleagues, just as they discuss theirs. We talk about our spouses, our children, our vacations. So I try to be very open and visible about who I am, and I think that's an important part of it. And I'm at a point in my life where I feel very comfortable just speaking my mind and letting people in. I realize this is a process and not everybody is going to be there, but I think that's where I am. And I think it's important also because in my role as a program director, I think it's important to show this type of openness so that trainees who might be looking at my program, for example, might say, you know what, I think this might be a place where I would feel comfortable. And hopefully other programs throughout the country might start saying and doing similar things. So for that reason, I think for me, it's important to be as open as possible. And I think I have been.
Great, thanks. So for me, it's a little bit different story. I mentioned this earlier, but for those of you who don't know me that well or aren't from Alcon, I just recently came out a year ago, almost a year ago exactly. And so for me, the journey to be fully authentic and share that information is a matter of deprogramming myself, I would say. I had gotten so used to gender neutral pronouns, talking about what I was doing, including that I was keeping myself insulated, I found that it's actually quite a hard habit to break. So Amanda, you mentioned before, if someone outright asked you something, you wouldn't lie, neither would I, but I did everything I could to make sure I didn't get asked a question that I didn't want to answer. So, I am attempting to be open with my colleagues. It's not it's not them. It's not necessarily fear so much anymore or uncertainty about how I'll be accepted, but it's more about getting used to it as a new habit. But I am finding that it is very rewarding to do that, and it also allows me to connect with associates, because when I'm closing myself off to those conversations, then you're closing the door on the reciprocal conversations, and you don't get to know people as well as you could. So a little bit different space, but I aspire to be where Peter is. I'm working on it. So let's see what the next question here was. We're going to switch over here to see, Scott, let's go with you. How would you agree that ophthalmology is a conservative culture? And if so, how do you deal with that?
Well, certainly there are conservative aspects to the culture of ophthalmology. Tend to be a fiscally conservative group as a whole, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're socially conservative as well. And I think I've been pleasantly surprised at how welcoming and accepting the ophthalmology community has been of me and my partner. In recent years, I've tried to bring my husband along to retina meetings like Retina Society, and he's really enjoyed getting to be a part of the retina community. And we have gone to a lot of the social events as a couple, and I think just having that representation there at these parties, which are obviously largely dominated by older, generally straighter and more conservative folks, but I think just having the diversity that's rising up in the ranks represented at those meetings starts to normalize the diversity inclusion kind of movement. So I do think that we're starting from a kind of conservative place, but as physicians, we are used to interacting with a wide array of people from different walks of life and different backgrounds. And I think that in general, you're not going to face very much overt homophobia or overt discrimination in this community.
Peter, any additional thoughts?
I agree with Scott on this one. I think, but I do wonder if some of it maybe depends a little bit on even geography. I did most of my training in Chicago and then a couple of years also in Boston, both pretty liberal cities. And I think that reflects the experience that I had during my training, where I was able to be open and I was welcomed. And then sort of the two subspecialties that I do, neuro-ophthalmology, our nanos community, I think is very open. And there's a number of same-sex folks that are in that group as well, that are open and out, and I know them more so than I think I would have expected. And in the ASOPers, Oculoplastic Society, also, I've been very, very welcomed and been a part of that group, and have not felt any repercussions at all from my personal sexuality. So yeah, I think there are some conservative parts to it, but in general, I have not felt that there's been any issue being open and out within ophthalmology and even the sub specialties that I'm a part of.
Great, thank you. Now, audience, we'd like to hear from you. We're going to go to our first poll question. We're going to ask about how many years you've been out, if you are LGBTQIA in the queer community in your profession.
You should have a little pop-up on your screen right now, and take a look at the answers, select the appropriate one, and be sure to hit submit so that your vote is counted. I'm going to give you about 7 more seconds, and then we'll end that poll and share those results. Okay, I lied. I'm going to give you 5 more seconds because there's still a lot of responses coming through. All right, I'm going to end that poll and share the results.
That's really encouraging to see that no one selected it's not an option. I know we mentioned this, I think Peter said it earlier, that it's a journey for everyone and we all do it at our own pace. So great. Angela, do you mind letting us know if we have any questions in the chat?
Heather, we do have some fantastic questions coming in the chat. Let me share the first one. It sounds like all of you have been more accepted when you came out than you'd feared. What do you think drove that fear? What about your training or professional experience might have contributed to that?
Scott, you mind kicking us off?
Sure, absolutely. So, I mean, I think a lot of the fear emanates from, uncertainty about how others are going to respond and whether we're going to face some sort of implicit bias, as a result of being identifiably gay, as compared with other minorities. The LGBT community has sort of an ability to be in the closet, to conceal their identity. And so that puts a lot of stress on the decision to come out and how out to be, because we have some degree of agency with respect to, disclosing our identity. So, I think, the long and the short of it is I don't regret coming out. I never have. And I think that, even though it's something that, I think I still face a little bit of a fear of coming out each time I do to someone new. It gets easier and easier the more that you do it. And it just, again, allows you to be your authentic self once you're comfortable doing so.
Great, thank you. Angela, next question.
Absolutely, thank you. Do you have any examples where you helped change a coworker or customer's misconceptions regarding LGBTQ plus individuals?
Amanda, do you have any thoughts on that one?
I don't know about a customer or a coworker necessarily, but I do have a story of a young patient that I had in my chair. Gosh, it was probably 8 to 9 years ago now, who was probably all of 15, 16 years of age, and really at that stage where they were questioning their entire identity, but also were shared with me that they were suicidal, and in that same breath said they thought that they might be gay, and we stopped the eye exam immediately, and I sat down and just spoke with them across from one another, looked them eye to eye and said, you should know that I am a gay person, and I'm here for you in any way that you need. We can do this eye exam another time. And that was an experience that was phenomenal for me, that I grew from. I continued to see that young person until I exited out of my private practice. And in fact, they were fully engaged in a healthy relationship with their partner and planning to be married. So I think that being open and not fearing that ability to make a difference in someone's lives by being who you are can be profound in many ways. So that was just one of those experiences that were exceptional. I'll never ever forget it.
Wow, thank you for sharing that, Amanda. That's really moving and impactful. One more question, Amanda.
Another one is, do you feel like there have been any negative repercussions from coming out?
Peter?
That is a bit of a tough question. I I would have expected to have a long laundry list of negative experiences towards myself or my family. And I honestly can't think of really a whole lot. One example was a friend of mine, however, when I came out to him, and he's very, very religious. We were college roommates, and I remember I came out to him and I asked him his thoughts, and his initial response to me was that he thought that that was sinful, and he didn't really support it. However, yet we still remain friends. He didn't cut me out of his life. And then a couple of years later, and I had been married by this time, he then actually came up to me and apologized about that statement. And he had thought long and hard about it. And throughout that period of time, then the Defense of Marriage Act had got retracted. Like, all of this stuff had happened socially in the country. And so although that was a negative first experience from a very close friend of mine, which really, really upset me at the time, later on, it turns out he thought about it and actually apologized about that. And that's like one of the, honestly, probably the worst thing I can think of that I have personally experienced. It has otherwise been a very positive and supportive process for me personally.
That's great. You know, I'll share on this one too, is my experience with telling my parents wasn't a great experience. And there was the impact to a person if the people who are supposed to love you no matter what don't accept you. You can't underestimate how that lingers. And a lot of us on the phone here, probably on the call, luckily have had very, very good and positive experiences. And it wasn't as bad as we necessarily thought per se. But for me, it was actually quite painful at the very beginning. And I think that greatly informed my comfort level with sharing beyond that. But I will say, although, to Peter's point, the reason I bring this up is because everybody can grow, everybody can learn, everybody can change. And I saw that with my parents. So I have a very healthy relationship with my parents now. I have a healthy relationship with my wife. But I would have never thought that was the case at the beginning of the journey. So it's important that although it's painful, that we leave that door open for people to grow. Let me go to the next question that we have here. How do you feel the medical field, and more specifically ophthalmology, is faring on inclusion compared to the greater society and other fields? Where's the biggest opportunity? Scott, I'll start with you.
Well, I think, in some ways, we may be a little bit behind the momentum that is occurring right now in society more broadly. I think, medicine, is a little bit slow to change just because of the hierarchy of our field and the amount of experience it takes to kind of reach that, peak of your career. And so we still have sort of a field that's dominated very much by sort of an older generation. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of, I think women have been great pioneers in ophthalmology in terms of rising, into positions of influence in academia and at meetings. And I think that has sort of started the conversation around diversity and inclusion in our field. And now it's really expanding to encompass race and sexual orientation and many other previously underrepresented groups. As far as, sorry, what was the second part of the question?
The second part of the question was, where's the biggest opportunity?
Yeah, I think obviously as we recruit new people into the profession, to be open-minded about people from different backgrounds, and I think that's happening more and more as far as residency classes in ophthalmology are becoming more diverse. From what I've observed, I've just been amazed at how in just the past couple of months, I've, been contacted by medical students and residents, and fellows from around the country who've seen, an article that was published recently in Retina Times focusing on LGBT issues in our specialty. And I think just having webinars like this and having content that's out there and accessible to trainees who are, looking for some guidance as they make decisions about how out to be as they enter the field is really helping to connect people to mentors, and that really makes all the difference.
Thanks, Scott. The next question actually came to me about me coming out a year ago. And the question really was my thoughts on my experience since then, both personally and what I'm seeing broadly at Alcon. So let me start with personally. It's been a great experience. I have luckily found that my fears were unfounded, that I've gotten a great deal of support from my peers, from the leaders in my team, just in general here at Alcon. I couldn't be happier with that. And one of my takeaways from finally coming out has been the conversations that I've had with people since then on what they could have done differently to make me feel comfortable enough to share. And actually, there are a few folks that you can tell they're hurt that I wasn't comfortable enough to be myself. And, to them, I've already said, and I'll say again, it was not personal. It is something where you weigh the risk benefit, and sometimes it's just safer to say, I'm not sure, so I'm going to play it safe. But I will say to those who are out there wondering, do they know somebody who hasn't come out? Are they being supportive enough? Little hints or little disclosures, little signs of support, especially to this community, little signals will help. I was at a technical review earlier this week, and I noticed that one of the people presenting had changed their Apple Watch face to a rainbow flag, and I know for sure that person is not in the LGBTQ plus community. At least I don't think so, based on what they've disclosed. And I think that's just a show of support. Those things help people feel more comfortable with sharing. But the experience has been great. I really do wish I had done it sooner. About Alcon broadly, I will say this: the last few pride flag raisings here have had very low attendance, I will say it that way. And this last one, which was just earlier this week, it happened on the same day in multiple locations. The entire executive leadership team that's in the United States, anybody who was here in the United States participated in one way or the other. And we had a big turnout from other both members of Open and other groups, I think. So that shows that the sentiment is changing and that people are engaging and becoming more involved in experiencing this. And not just this, we had we had the pleasure of meeting with OWL on Juneteenth on Tuesday this week. The ACE group sponsored that, our African Ancestry ERG. And she talked about how she's been struggling, for decades and decades to get Juneteenth recognized as a national holiday. And it was just this week. So, and it was really cool to not only have had her talk to us, but then see her there with the president signing Juneteenth into a federal holiday. So I think things are moving and in the right direction here at Alcon. Let me go on to the next poll question really quickly. Has being LGBTQ plus had any impact on, oh, that's not a poll question. Sorry about that. Oh, yes, it is a poll question. Let's go to the next poll question. How about that?
Absolutely. So here's our next poll about mentorship opportunities. And again, make sure you hit that submit button so that your votes are counted. We have so many straight allies. It's fantastic. All right, I'll give you about 10 more seconds. Then I'm going to wrap up the poll. So get your results in and hit submit. All right, let's share those results. There you go, Heather.
Great. Well, excellent. So let's follow up on the answer of this poll with some perspective from our panelists. Amanda, what do you think about opportunities for mentorship in the community?
Well, I've had nothing but positive outcomes from or for mentorship opportunities within this community. I think just broadening the knowledge that we're just as capable or equally capable as anyone else to perform these sorts of roles is critical. And I will say this: all of the folks in the audience who are identifying as allies, you guys are just as important because you're often in a position to support us or lift us up or put us in these mentorship roles. Frankly, you often are the people who facilitate those sorts of avenues. So please continue to do so. Interaction with our fellow healthcare professionals, I've only grown over time because of our community and being part of our community and being open about it. So I think that as our environment changes, and it's rapidly changing, it's only going to get better and better as time goes on.
Thank you for that, Amanda. So, we have a lot of questions that are still coming in. We had a few more polls, but it's been a rich conversation and we're out of time. So I do want to give my sincere thanks to our panelists, Dr. Lee, Dr. Walter, Dr. MacIntosh. Thanks for taking time out of your very busy schedules for this very important event. I really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks for sharing your experiences and opinions with us today. I also want to send a thanks to both Alcon and OWL for coming together to plan this great webinar and elevating such an important topic for discussion. I'm proud to work for such a forward-thinking company like Alcon, and we're really grateful for the partnership with OWL, their work in advancing diversity and inclusion in the field of ophthalmology. You can learn more about OWL's programming and membership opportunities online at owlsite.org. And finally, I'd like to thank all of you for joining us today and being part of our conversation. We'll have this recording that will be shared in the future, and you can share that with your colleagues and friends. So, with that, thank you all for taking time out of your schedule, and happy Pride.